Sanju yes. I Sanju sent Piji the Nichi Sandra. Ah, Mutin Roshawa. You must have night to attend the Nigashashura. Tadilla, Dana Sanju telling you Sanju Cassim and you loaded in the Jimbaina. But I Sanju sent the candidate said with President later. Lodena Gis, Sanju Sanju cheese. 와, 제가 제가 대용 분도 대지름은 선수지 되었어도 다디 생지 지다지 출도 그러더라. 되네 아니 슈터 초지 생도 간서 베전 초지라 되지는 빼샤워라. 치시디 칼라는 아주 별에나 마자카버 인디치카버 그래서 자탄 되더라. 마치 자치 아니 잠볼에는 잠도 인서라. 치오실에 드리래도 되디 빼샤르마도 우리 치시디 가리나라 에디디 말라 제가 치오시디 주인만 무튼만 문로데 오라 취디양 잠잠가 잠자데 데디선 담을 제다 치라제 담을 치오라 이제 지라게 치선이 가서 그 니에데 챤데 대고 맞다다 로딘지라 셰기오라 제가 슈터 초지 준지 체르스나 취체와 마세기 베준 딱파시 로딘지라 도가 레지 치왕 당베 담스 제장아도 단다 텐데위 컬러 초지 준지 치르스 도가레지 제장아도 그 딜렌데기 수수기 지게레 겨치네 겨데우친데부디 도가와라 그 가르치네 디긴데부터 알아 뇽고버르지라 도가레지 치왕 당베 담스 치왕라데 따나서 담셔지라 담볼라데 pe try do ra ne tambe tambo na sin ti khare damni kharela na anza danjen la jura danjen da denli wo san de danjen ta chu danjen di khala na cha chi gu tu zu su ko sha cha chi la de sim jing sim ya gi do hu gu do pe ji de la wo re sim ra cha chi dang ani tawa la de sim jing sim ya gi ne anzo ta den do ta we bu su chu den de gi na lo la chu ro ne 심지 된 구사미와 라 다코 타바토요 뭐고 담되고라 부수 츠와스 단동딜란데스
그래서 단도 추시를 내가 저기 대박하시나 제가 나치기 동의주라 딜러 샤워를 so then I think we had an extensive discussion about the importance of renunciation, how to generate such a renunciation, and the purpose of generating renunciation, and then how renunciation in itself can only serve as the cause of liberation, not as the cause of complete and perfect enlightenment. Then, in order for us to achieve such a complete and perfect enlightenment, then that particular renunciation that we develop must be sustained by the awakening mind of bodhicitta. So now, in the next verse, it discusses the purpose of generating that awakening mind of bodhicitta. So the 7th verse, it reads, "Beings are swept along by the powerful current of the 4 rivers, tightly bound by the chains of their karma, so difficult to undo, ensnared within the iron trap of their self-grasping, and enshrouded in the thick darkness of ignorance." So the purpose of generating the awakening mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta is to free ourselves completely from the samsaric existence, in order for us to alleviate the suffering of fellow samsaric beings. So it describes the true nature of the existence of samsara for sentient beings. Beings are swept along by the powerful current of the 4 rivers. So the 4 rivers is a metaphor for the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. These are the 4 powerful currents, the powerful current of the 4 rivers. So beings are swept continuously along by the powerful current of the 4 rivers. So as long as you are born in samsara, you are always swept along by these 4 rivers of birth, aging, disease, and death in any kind of birth that you take in samsara. And then the samsaric existence is marked by being bound or by being chained by their afflictive actions or karma. which is so difficult to undo, which is so difficult to kind of free ourselves from. And then they are also ensnared within the iron trap or iron net of their self-grasping. The reason that we are so tightly bound to our karma and afflictions are because we are caught in the iron net of always identifying with a conceived self, which we hold to be absolute and truly existent. Thus.
그래서 단다디 페도 샤지 레기더라 쇼지를 단다 페치나 제가나 지지자 소라 지나 레리더라 난 단다 지데 딘데 단제다 가서 단다 짜지다 더웨기 부르라 짜지나디 심지 신야기 디네 쳐지도다 아니 타와라디가라 다 심지 시자기야 타잘라죠 티샤기레 아니 마리바디 가르샤나 마리바디 나콘도 나포도든 하친래다 하친꾼이 팁레디 가는 거 지 템버도든 나포슈 팁스나 나군도 차니 베 세세체메 버차기로 디 가르페서 샤가나 가서 마리바디라 마리바디 라지레 마인자 가서 유 지마치인데 통마도니라 되게 딥디워서 아니 하친꾼이 투스 팁레마 나군도 팁디고 레스라라 자 오늘 디 그네는 미미시바 덴데 시바 코에게 다가도 두미로 무타메바 베 주르보 네데오라 타디르라는 메 무타 카사 미미시바 체신체워라 데 타다 무미바 양자양자 가도 코랑 센스 제데오라 코라 타 토다밀레라 딜레스라 아니 데디 카레라나 디 나로라 가도 코랑 센스 제우르가라 레뉴기 신용기 왕기 가도 소소 제가나 질라 라와요마 단디기도 동예 숨르디다 제가나 지기 동예 숨드라 근데나 동예 숨라 대체 아니 동예 주둥이 챙가 제반데 지기 동예 숨에 샤초더라 근데 동예 숨지 아니 진지 메반다라디가라 지 무투니 가두이네라 단다이나 단다 제랄레오나 단다 메바이나 단다 제 근데 무투니 레디레 동예 숨지 진치 메바라디가라 진치 바메바 야네야데 가서 나로라디가라 동예들 베 강이 튀니라 저 동예기 나데샬라 미지 나데는 베 서치문나나 그 동예기 나데샬라 오라 나라스 내금 넌더 치비 만남치스 제가 딘데기 나데게다 코에기 동예들 냥딩이 강이 튀니 아니 내금 딘데기 강이 튀니 게 넌더 치비 만남라데 가다 가정한테 데스 도차레 아 맞아 제월라 토마메 바인자 아니 말라 토마 타다 드네요 말스랑 얘기 다음도 받은 게 맞지 뒷받은 게 맞슈요 말라 라요 말라 심지어나지랑 게 맞지만 뭐 진짜 메레디가 딘데기 마드다 다다강이 TV 쳔비 내거라스 내거들 아니kal라 안주 딘데기 내다데 간주 산나다네 안주레데라 내당도 실어라 안주 삼네 아니 센조 제번 줄레디가 다 마심제타지다 도도시나 마기 심제타지 거기 둥이를 나니라 대 둥이 메다메 마리바다 단제다 두주기 왕기 코알라 나데와디 아니 코랑이야 대야기 되바라 근데 라니 지부 많이 심제타지기 근데 아니 대와 터버쇼 사야데 근데 샤추 센데 아니 샤추 구셈 롬부치디 라주레 제브른 줄레디 캬랑기 셈레 제오초레레
So in the seventh verse, as it highlights the purpose of generating that awakening mind of bodhicitta, then we are taught to contemplate on how beings are trapped in samsara. And now when we look at each particular line, then it uses a particular metaphor to kind of describe the kind of situation of sentient beings or the condition of sentient beings in samsara. So as long as you are born in samsara, you are always swept by the powerful current of the four rivers of aging, death, birth, and sickness. Then our existence is always defined by being chained to our karma or to our actions, which are informed by afflictions, which are so difficult to escape. And then the chain is used as the metaphor for karma. And then the reason that we find the chain of karma so difficult to escape is because we are trapped we are trapped in an iron net of self-grasping. So the metaphor used to describe self-grasping is the iron net or iron trapping. And then the reason that we begin to identify with such a misconceived self, which we hold to be absolute, truly existent, is because we are enshrouded in the thick darkness of ignorance. So imagine that if our whole environment is covered by a thick, dark fog, then can we hope to see the true kind of picture of the environment that we are in? This is impossible. So ignorance is the cause of us developing that misconceived conception of ourself, which is absolute and truly existent. So understanding that this is the situation, or this is the reality of beings in samsaric existence, then the next verse talks about how to generate such an awakening mind of bodhicitta. Again and yet again, they are reborn in limitless samsara and constantly tormented by three forms of suffering. This is the current condition. All your mothers from previous lives, contemplate their plight and generate supreme bodhicitta. So then, as we already discussed, samsara has no beginning and samsara is limitless, and the beings in this limitless and beginningless samsara are always suffer through what we call the three types of suffering: suffering of change, suffering of pervasive conditioning. And this is the current condition of all sentient beings, who are no different from your mothers, because if, as we discussed in quite a lot of detail yesterday, since samsaric existence itself is beginningless and limitless, then it makes sense that in one of our lifetimes, everyone has served as our mothers. So we look at all sentient beings as our mothers. So when you develop such a closeness to sentient beings by looking at all of them as your mothers, then you need to contemplate on the manner in which they continue to suffer in samsaric existence. Contemplate their plight, their condition, and then begin to generate that supreme bodhicitta or supreme awakening mind. Yes. Choice.
What is plight?
Plight means a bad condition.
A bad condition.
지상 내가 더치비 만남 라이트레고라 나가서 지기대나로 나가서 샘 예슈디 가서 땡고서도 담보로 아마 책이라 당가서 지다가서 지내면가 된 시간에 뭐 셰데셰라 지상 말라디가라 아마디 칸데 쳐부지레스나 가서 담보 아메기 정가서 녜네 차네 다와 글어서 서서 저거는 키워 드니 아메기 만가서 마 찌응도가 아마라 나숙차수 간데라 드니 아메기 마 쳇차와다 코나 주부딘데 있는 강이 체리네 당도 부고들어 마테야다 직 부고들라 칼로다 직 장마서도 몸불려 마우치기라 드니야데 칼로레 때 전부 차네 다디 아마기 콜라 다우면도 아니 직 리도면도 가르는 베 아마디기 마디 치기도 와 드니야데 전부 차와이네요 랍들라도야다 드니야데 파면제기 치초거데 간다 아마디기 베 부고라 칠레 gebala고 다 가지 한사이기 안돌라 상쇼시나고요 그래서 아마디기 간도 제마타바데 유셔나 아주 추적하시 되게 좀 감사 싫어요. 와 되네 가서 이제 라브라도 안데 지기야 야타지리스나야 아니 콜레지기야 야사도 되지를 땅 아니 양지 콜레지도 내다 파문제리 초라 안 된데가네 그베 센데도 부글래 다 아마디 그런 심만 봐도 부글래 센데라 되네 양 쳔불렌다 디야 베고 털로도 도서나 다 마음고 그 미치디 칸데시 코로바 칸데지라게 양 디기 부글래 센데지라 되더디 부고도 부고래 야선데 되네 진짜 변은 간줄라 다 파마기 지게 간줄라 칼로 세워도 간줄 시 마투어지라 간줄 파 부고 파마를 되네 칼로 커버래 봐 진짜 파마스니디 라도 간줄 첨보자로 시중 감시한 단동 간줄래 선데 봐 파이야 지다게 니쇼부터 다 어쩌지에서 대 파마다 가가 디디가래 대감지 저 예는 맨날 하면서라 지다게 간줄 파마를 대비 디디라
So there is something that we need to think about here when we're talking about looking at sentient beings as our own mothers and recognizing this fact by taking into account that samsara itself is beginningless and limitless. So as we discussed, in order for us to generate an awakening mind, there are two methods. Then one is through the process of developing an equanimous view or exchanging the self for others. And then the other way is through the 7 precepts of causes and fruit, and that starts from recognizing sentient beings as your mother. So why do we need to recognize sentient beings as our mothers? Because when we look at the relationship between a mother and a child, then that is a relationship that is defined by love, care, concern, and compassion. So, for example, the first education of mankind itself is the education that a mother imparts to a child, and not only that, when a newborn child, if he or she does not receive the proper care, concern from the mother, it is very tough for that child to see the light of the next day, or even the next few hours. So look at the way that relationship is always informed by a sense of love, care, and concern. The mother, immediately when the child is born, has to take care of the child, and then the survival of the child depends on the mother, and then the growth, development of the child depends on the mother. In all that process, the mother does this without any consideration for her own safe being, for her own comfort. And then even when the child grows up to be an adult, a mother still always worries and has concern about the well-being of the child who has now at this point grown up to be an adult in college, working, or so forth. Even when we are 40 and 50, if we have our parents and our mothers, then they still continue to worry in the same manner. So this is why it is important to develop such an attitude towards sentient being, wherein we look at sentient beings with the same love, care, and concern.
그래서 근데 이제 가장 가서 진대명아 되어 있어라. 이제 받든지 인서도에라. 지난 가장 어디서 쉬잖아. 그래서 근데 이디가 나타 다 근데 이내 안 먼저 맞자 좀 하래. 단단 뭐든 알아서 하고도. 알아서 춘중인데 대만 맞으네. 먼저기 예도 보고 싶어가 아마도 일단 먼저 아메 된데 쓰여서 이러라. 먼저기 충아 다스부 gem버는 수수기 빈제 충어도 아마이 간다 저치더라. 그래서 일단 내가 하고도. 봐. 근데 이제 단다기 마디 근데기까지 저거지 이마이나 다 나cewa 토마 요 말스라 토마 미디가라 아니 지금 나cewa 대감슬래데 나 디보다 미 디레칭아 마체 디레시마 아치에 말을 내가 수티에 버려 말라 타 린두지레 마도 심지하지 수수 마치도 가서 나한테 cewa 토마다 장가지에 찜마토지자 마디에 장가지 마토지 레레디오라 근데 인자 단대기 마디 자와치부 근데 인디가 이마 나시게 cewa 하면 그 마디 먼저 된데 좀 라, 이 칼라 다중치 라. 다중치 디가 아니 단대 마디 하나 저까지 전부 다 야고도 알아서 하고 와는 찍고 와는 시기 cewa 하면 마 딩하면 먼저 엔디 저거를 제대 라시기 심단 요리 라. 심지다지 맞다투는 먼저 펜도 가두는 미 로타 요리라 펜도도. 다 된데 너무 딜라는데
So then now this is a more detailed kind of exploration of the 7 precepts of causes and fruit, looking at sentient beings as your own mothers. So if you yourself are not a mother or have not been a mother, you can still relate to this by recognizing that the selfless nature of the love between a mother and a child that a mother has for child. So when you recognize that selfless nature of the love between a mother has for her child, then you yourself has a mother in this life, and then you understand and recognize this selfless nature of the love. And now, as we said, samsara itself is beginningless and limitless. Then you cannot begin to estimate and say that these beings have been my mother and these beings have not been my mother. Since beginningless time, we have taken uncountable births. So it is true that at one point all beings have served as our mothers in a previous life. So you need to extend that kind of recognition of the selfless nature of a mother's love towards all sentient beings by looking at them or recognizing them as having been your mothers in a previous life.
지정한 진대명아 되는도 가서 되는 날로 당부도 줬어. 마시가래 마딘데치. 맞죠? 장가면 봐인자 아니 다마 딘디 치사요 레선라 나 마시라 마시바자 마레라는 샤샤는 디입니다 라 마시는 마이 테네도 텐랭게 뭔가 안에 지어 되는 담보야 삼라 스스로 삼사네 다 콘도 딘데게 단다 콘조라 강이데 나다자다지 전진 잠마다 강이 망부지 티에간도 수술 통해라 딘데 통해도 수술 강도지도 파이 로바치 라 텐서 수술가 아마 있나 다 들어봐 게뭐 테네 저런 지까지 전부 임바 땡큐 tatela pa susule ni bodile konzule yaga do juyena pa ten so la diga la pa ta kala pa jinsa do te ko ba ten to mo ma shi ba ani ten ba ten ba de sembal ten bi goni ta pa tenen je ba ten so wa la odin.
So that's the first of the 7 precepts of causes and fruit, recognizing your mothers or recognizing sentient beings as your mothers. Now, just that mere recognition of sentient beings having been your mothers in your previous life is not enough. Now, one needs to remember their kindness and contemplate on the fact that that due to that selfless nature of a love that a mother has for her child or her children, then the kind of extent towards which she goes to take care and to take care and to nurture such a child. So we kind of remember that kindness, and not just in this life, but in uncountable lives, all sentient beings have shown us such selfless love.
제가 다 나도 너무 마시 아니 ten so le le ro ta di chan ta nga zo yon le kan de ta wona so ma di dong yen bai nei khari nei nga zo kharla na so ka di chim yin za ka di na so ama di yin jo thong ora ka jo mi jo khari na pu di amal ga da kashi ma ga yesu chaba de ma re na ro ine ya ma che so ma di so ka di chim yin za pa ge dol ta ma ro o di ne yin za ani ye de won ta ro 근데 용어지 근데 용어들 있으나 이다 용기 샴발을 되가라 될 샴지기 로체 봐 소소 파기를 가는 조부인의 감바주에 라바주에 비주에 다 간다 가른 뭐 가리네 그래 용어 샴베기 로치다 봐 마시바 텐도 텐서 용어 샴바 아니 다 히질래 되어 봐 히질래 되가라나 그 강이게 배 갈로 강이지 되되나 봐 딘데들 강이들 마수니 될래야 탑이 탄도 로체 봐 강이 디 가서 히질래 가서 진 동일래 미네 될래 텐도 로체 와다 히질래 세상 딘디 히질래 다시 방가로 려다.
So then, recognizing your mothers, remembering their kindness, and then you have to now repay their kindness too. For example, in this life, if your mother, as your mother, cares for you, nurtures you, and then you grow up into an adult, then there comes a point wherein, when they enter old age, you have to look after them and care for them. So similarly, one has to take upon the responsibility of alleviating the suffering of all sentient beings at one point, because they have served as your mothers. And now, when you develop such an attitude, then one also needs to contemplate on the kind of heartwarming nature of the love that a mother has for her child, and a child has for their mothers. So this is called heartwarming love because the appeal is not on outside appearances and conditions. It doesn't matter if the child is ugly, it doesn't matter if the child is sickly. The mother has the same kind of heartwarming love, and it doesn't matter whether the mother is well off or not. The child has the same heartwarming love for their mother. So that is the kind of heartwarming love that we need to develop towards all sentient beings. And then after that, you need to develop compassion for sentient beings. Compassion is defined as that unbearable feeling that you want to alleviate the suffering of others. When you see someone suffering, then you want to free them from that suffering. That is compassion.
다 오늘 히지지야 답변은 저 피 동의 질문이라 다디 테로치네 지마로 테어랑이 자냐고 로로지라 다디 테로치네 지마로 냐면 히지체 다 테와디 니기 나라나기 기테도치 동네들이 나라나기 제고 인사인데라 가서 하산다라 지당 가서 배선지 셔야 니지디 아마다다와 타산디 파다다와라 셔야 다 지당이 걸려올라나 아마기 파길라 부구디 지추나 사도나 께베기 때바다 쿠페 동네를 테로치네 지마로 선로도 리고레스 tapala ro ina lamsa gora chomni khatu ya lengi tene ro ji hasang pesha lotab chele ro sia te pud ma ji te lotab chimo to ta te san ta ro legi ji ra
So then, this is the manner in which you kind of, through a gradual process of contemplation, come from first recognizing your mothers, remembering their kindness, repaying their kindness, developing heartwarming love and compassion. Then you develop a pure resolve or a higher resolve. When you develop that compassion wherein you have this unbearable feeling that you do not want to see others suffering, then when you do see others suffering, then you develop that pure resolve that you will take it upon yourself to alleviate the sufferings of others. So, in the traditional context, the compassion is likened to a mother, and pure resolve is likened to a father. So, for example, the mother, when she sees her child drowning, develops an unbearable feeling of compassion that the child is drowning. The father immediately jumps into the river to kind of save the child. This is a very traditional metaphor in the modern context. maybe. Yes. Maybe now there is not much difference between the scope of motivation between a father and a mother. The last of the negation.
지당한테 디자 지당한테 부모기 저저지라 부모는 다냠래 지당기 때문에 신용이 채널에 내가당 다 지당기데 더블 리초라 이는 왜내 지금서 잠부터 했단 때지 부도 부모기 치바지 양이 부모들라 나라 부모를 통주 책임이더라 그것도 치바지다 때는 아주 봉하다 부모가지 리가는 잡고는 콘주 찍다다 찍도 시기입니다 부모기 만도 아주 시에는 진짜 베베 부모이 나래 이시에기 부모들이 나 하고 맞다 지방이 실로 가서 제거 신발 싫어하고 말아 지진은 집어 인식이래 나라게 통다는 잠도 신하로 내가 저 강이 지 보면 남서 미주 땅 주주로 시도 너 전부 셔워라 야 아니 부두도 가리네 샘벌도 강이 여기 남서 그 맞대입니다 대체 아니 가서 지금 자로 신생거나 맞아거나 보무지기 파트 카트 미질면다 자고는 콜로 난 희제 있나래 생춘주라고 뜻 접하고 부디 가린지 딱 달라는 지시니로 먼저 통고도 실로 만증되니 마지 불어 부모를 러전 때문에 가시 대지 뉴로도 이게 부모를 통주마다 보면 이제 열다요
So now in this context, I would like to say that in this day and age we talk about equality, empowerment, and so forth. But in the process of fighting for such social changes, it is important not to deny and not to ignore the basic reality of our beings, of ourselves as men, women, male and female. This is important because we cannot all strive to become equal in all manner of ways. We cannot all insist on being empowered in a similar manner, because if we are taking reality into account, then it is a fact that I'm not sure how it is in the West, but in Tibet and in particularly the Asian countries, then we understand that the feminine, that the females have are more in touch with their emotions, are more in touch with their nurturing qualities of emotions such as love, care, and compassion, whereas the male are more kind of impulsive and impulsive in their reactions to situations. We need to take that into account. If we fail to take that into account and insist that all of us are equal, then it's a denial of reality itself. So this I would like to stress.
When I was a trooper, Pumudu Trado, Angelo Tendia, Chirico, Sierra Tomindora, Ramushinera, Popuina, Lamsaconso, the Lord of the Lamb, Carina Zotoni, Yagashune, Perduashune, this low cheddar.
So these qualities that we have, they have their pros and they have their cons. And without recognizing these qualities and insisting that we are all equal, then we cannot begin to make sense of what should we do or what should we not do. For example, if we look at the way that women fight and men fight, the worst that women fight is by pulling their hairs and so forth. But if there is a full blown out fight between two men, then sometimes it is the case that they do not think about anything and impulsively strike the other person with a knife or something.
Yeah, Chignea, the Shitogi, Labjajansta, and the Nushu Pomutu Kawaii and Dogono, Chipachibu Dotonido, Sosu Ranchapida, Lojan Chane, Chiki, Sosu Dalaka, Sosu Duda. The young Chiki, Jagata, Purda, the Zulajan Tang, Chijuga, China Pomore, now the orders. Cannot tell like Shilo de Emma, cannot love the Pomukaranza, the Ninja, Pamaka Labja, the Rare Samero, Ra, and Chidang Shilo Don and Gatsaro, Yidikala, Rashi, the Logic Chana, the Din,
So, but saying that, we also need to take into account the societal conditions and the societal conditions which kind of shape up our nature and shape up our ideas about gender empowerment. This is what we need to fight, not our basic nature of being feminine and masculine. I think this is important to realize.
기다양 아주 찡이시네 보물을 던지 말다 보물에 대해 시래구나 신이로 나라 코차 탕진의 시여더라 시래구나 신이 받아 아니 인지그나 신이 받아 근데 뭐 무슨 거다 제와를 나가서 지내가는 제와를 통마의 수익이들은 아주 많이 되고 담보담보 기계요 말이야 가서 지 스가게 된들라고 말 담보 시제 고추서데 아마이 되고 그래 근데 인디야 말에 제와 전부인 받아 먼저 제와 사변도 감리가 시대데 뭐에게 사변도 수 있다고 아마도 나 디페서 좀 세상에서 부모 두절라 된다고 말라
So this is not to say that women are worse off than men or women are lesser than men, because we need to take into account the full breadth of reality in order to kind of understand our true nature. And for example, in many of the texts in Buddhism, we say that the feminine nature is one of wisdom. Many texts clearly states this. And then His Holiness the Dalai Lama repeatedly stresses that the first education that mankind receives is the education from mother. And that education is one of love, care and concern. So this is the manner in which we need to understand it. And if we begin to deny this, then maybe the first education of mankind itself is affected.
다디 지당가서 범위래 때지 깔려래 굴리고 주당 찬들에 뭐또 생기 돈이야라 그래서 사지 고마 더투에 니바다 먼저 로조치니 푸다 봄 남자 로투에디 집어라 디선 잠니 제지간에 신제의 신뢰도 되는 라디니 마보요래 내가 충분치더니 마보요라 그래 다양 범물에 수수 보고 나다도 채고다 디데기야 겐신바에서 콜 고고라 말이 채바요 말이 제만주 채바 치라요 말서 소치리다
So the difference is mainly on the outset physical differences between men, but the kind of ability of the mind to aspire to and to achieve things is equal in both men and women. It is kind of evident in the fact that we have many world leaders, many strong world leaders who are women in this day and age. And the reason that traditionally women didn't come into such positions of power and authority is because of social conditioning and the responsibilities that were imposed on them. So we need to fight that, not the basic difference that we cannot ever begin to deny.
This Pomu Yenji and Pomu in German and Lamsak doing Shasharo, Mazul Enji Tansu Tamara. So Yonson Damoni. Tia, Mazu Chesan, Namdu meet Samatum which you would lavore, and it should Samatum which you order. For the Moy Yenji in a dear Tempuchura. Chesan the Saman Yordara. Kashin Hamin Loddo. Susan Pug Pomu Yenji Meba, Ani Kara Miri Yenji Meba, Chulu Yenji Meba, Toba Yenji. Sama 템보고라. 라 쇼에는 가서 이제 된다고. 쇼에는 가서 디 엔지 시대네 되고 말아. 하나도 쇼 연산다네. 아니 디 산타트네 개매요.
So it is important to understand these kind of metaphors in their proper context, and we say that we should not discriminate and differentiate on the basis of race, religion, and so forth in order for us to achieve global harmony and peace. And if we begin to differentiate and discriminate on the basis of gender itself, then it doesn't make sense. So it is important to recognize the context in which these differences are being talked about.
Okay. That the day of the Geneva did go to Jay. And Sanju same lady, the day Jachin Mujira, and then Mashi 10 or you Shamba, and just have some like the little. Today, Rajuli, today, Sanju sent just on the pair with her. So the Ganchi made the listen. Tadanga Sanju same like the cousin cheating on the Dajin Jagan, such as Rashi Jago. Chitan, Jingi doing it, Lingi doing a call about it, and participated as way of Madra. In name of the Kugi Quasala, not the Dinde doing on a Kazika in Tessa. Ra, today, Sunday, that was some Tangi, Tola and Pagila, Jimmy Lachedo. That's a bit logic.
So then, in that gradual process of first recognizing and so forth, then you develop that pure resolve. Then you have achieved the fruit itself of that gradual process of contemplation on the causes, which is the generation of awakening mind itself, the seventh bodhicitta. So if we are able to generate such an altruistic intention in all our mind streams, then there will be no more suffering in this world. But all of our suffering comes from the fact that we cannot ever bring ourselves to adopt such an altruistic attitude. And now, when we say that we need to develop such an altruistic intention of alleviating the sufferings of others, then you cannot begin to magically transplant other people's suffering and make them disappear and take it upon yourself. This is not what we mean. What happens when you develop such an attitude or such an intention? Then all your being, all your actions are informed by that particular motivation. And when it is informed by such a vast, expensive, open motivation, then you would not ever harm anyone, and all your actions would be geared towards benefiting others. And this is the manner in which we can begin to create harmony and benefit sentient beings. George agrees.
No, they got to something.
Maybe it's a very basic question, but it just
Okay.
realized that I never thought about it. So when we talk about achieving or reaching enlightenment, that means that the stopping of cyclic existence. And if we have the motivation of liberating all sentient beings, in which ways we are capable of helping or liberating or alleviating the suffering of other sentient beings if we are not in this realm, like human. Understand the question? If I think I would, I'm not saying it would be more beneficial, but the first answer that comes to my mind is that it is more beneficial to be here rather than in other place. For sure you can benefit.
With or without achieving enlightenment?
I'm saying with reaching enlightenment.
So you have to reach enlightenment first, for yourself.
But in that way, you stop cyclic existence. You're not in, so if you're not here, like how do you
stop taking your birth right? You stop taking uncontrollable birth in samsara. Tadi I will ask her. Motiya dirda that manzo tharba thomne ani sanji ki koban thobure sumge ras. Ani tharba thomna kowana na khorgi marwas. Ani inaya sanji ki koban thobla chanju ki sem che borwas. Ani chanju ki sem di chenesra chuyang tharba ne tharnasra korona na khorgi yo marwas. Inaya semji ki dungye sebo yenas kowana ma phabu yo marwas sanju. Ani chezangsra ani tharba thobure go bakharresra. 아니 산지기 고반 톱나야스라 코아나다 미기 도아미 야나 예송데 되나는 지기메나스라 아니 치랑 타르바기 치료를 되네 도아기 동네 한데 세고레스라 아니 나랑도 제나 아니 산지 고반 톱나야스라 다가랑 밀리랑 저 대야도든요라 되서부터
네. 코타바톨라디가라 디디 베드 코라 미메미 참 베나 사지버로 리버레이션랜드 도지델 도지델 사지에레 미데 미냠도 슈 최테 드리진 슈버로 라 단단단단하다 군디로지 사지 켈레니나 그 사지선에 미냠도 슈 미가 제상아서 콘조 퀄리 진짜 코에 드마 막고라 시고 라 코에 네들레디데 코란슬 코에 드마디요 말았어 라 아주 딜레게 메토베마 담레 시전 당이 드마 막고 콘조라 니리 데샤시나 티무 딘데 드마 막고 사지디에 사제선 내주 도지된다 우리 코에 네로다 라오라 잠니디가라 사제버데 코로나 딘데 코에 니제기 드마도 봐 제와 빼마 딘담라 제 담발레 딘데 조우진데 제와르데 코로나 남이 드마 막고 딘데 제기라 이네 저랑이 사제사디가라 네 심바지라 드니 안제 디과들 임처럼 마지가데 디 코에 동네라 마지우 되마라.
So then when we're talking about liberation and enlightenment, we should not think about liberation and enlightenment as some sort of magical attainment wherein you go to a different realm after that. For example, when you look at the historical Buddha himself, he achieved liberation and enlightenment in the human form itself. And then he didn't magically disappear or go away to a different realm. He continued to give us teachings about the true nature of reality to true sentient beings in order for them to come to understand the means through which they can overcome such suffering in samsara. So this is the activity of an enlightened being, to show the path towards overcoming the suffering of samsaric existence. And now the example that is used to describe the bodhisattvas and these enlightened beings and their activities are in the manner of a lotus growing out of mud. If there is no mud, there is no lotus. But still, the lotus is free from the defilements of the mud, even if it grows out of the mud itself. So that is why when we look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama, it might not be the case for everyone, but when we look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama, we look at him as a manifestation of an enlightened being who continues to take birth in samsara in order to alleviate the sufferings of some sentient beings.
답변은 알아서 도시나 코에 내래 제래 코에 팀아 라 대샤시나 디모 마리베기 팀아 삼아 아저란지를 키디라 내가서 통과 말하면 제 라네다 디가 가서 다 주녀스레 도문다 라.
So then this is the mark of an enlightened being, that even if they willingly takes birth in samsara, they are free from the defilements and obscurations of samsara. But we are not like that.
제가 산지기 산지에 차디가라 산지에 코랑 임무보다 두번 참았다 라 내주 도제들 내가 좀 라이치는 산지라 송고라 산지에 차비질 쿠투제와 신부기 땅 하나 저기 뒤져들 나오면 되죠 단단하절로 이동 두제 하진도 차이라 이네 단도보다 하절로 주체색이 시디 조디 조 산전대들 단 남배 취들이다야 취를 정말 제가 말데 남배 취디야 달로 이동 두제 하지로라 제도 디도에니 담보파라기 투자어 전부고는 대줄라 코나 사제산 땅 사제술라네 기부시는 이미도 right 샘 슈금이도 할라나 취숨 아니 디제기 카운다 메발다네 아니 코라기 칭게여서 칸데지 가이나 들라테네 아니 담보카 텐데지 데네 데랑가야 텐셰라 제가 텐데 인존디가라 그 디나로 잠딩 디가라 그라 사제니 신감 신바질라 만들어지네 최대는 가지고 단다보도 가지고 냠슬래야 돼야지 산지기 숨어라 계시 산지 코로나 타산에 러시아는 아주 하고며 다 산지기 숨셔지 된 아주 냠매치네 되죠 사실 되는 수 오늘이 숨버장도 마치 산지 거를 숨으려는 얘기 시셔스 얘기 가라 얘기 출을 담배 남된도 쓰라 타바 출을할 시버잖아 오마래 제가 아니 얘기 숨셔지디 얘기 마시 시셔지디 캬라 라리그레스 저런 냠매치다 지디제 지 가르스는 코랑이 취 마무송을 취송을 세지 대회 세진데 레바탈라 나이가 라마차이 구시면서 더 뺏지 자침으로 와 나랑이 아니게 그래서 뒤지다 취지 되니 설레된 과민이비 아니 가르 디디디 냠도 마라
디마리 디타모도 취
어떤데 디기 들어와 아 세지 대회 세진데 레바탈라 나이가 라마차이 구시면래도 세상 얘기 아 송샤주기 취디 아니 그랑이 사지기 송래 산지기 송래라는 다 가지고 그거 제바 많이 바로 문주기 몬데 제바 많이 바로 아니 수주기 따지 지나디야 문주기 세르로 요이나 아니 세디 파치기레스 다기레스 멜세기레스 라 세지 다위 세진다 레바탈라 스타티야 부치스 나이카를 그런 송셔지더라 라와 차이 근데 따지 야부 치비고니 그랑이 냠스 레마도 그 시를 맨데 그 산지를 달라니 다가지에 그시 맞제 숨라 디간주 고지침부 쇼도 안 알아서
So then, when we look at the historical Buddha himself, then after he gained liberation and enlightenment, he didn't like confine himself to that bliss of enlightenment and liberation. He had in his heart that compassion that we talked about, the compassion of awakening mind, to alleviate the suffering of sentient beings, which is exactly why he began to give these teachings. And these teachings survive to this day. It is in almost 2,500 years. It is the activity of an enlightened being through which these teachings survive to this day. And even when he gave these teachings, he made to the point that if you seek freedom from suffering, then I have shown you the path to liberation. But it is upon yourself, the duty is upon yourself to walk that path. I cannot make you walk that path. So one has to walk that path oneself. Then he also makes the point before he gave his first teaching that just as you would investigate if a gold is authentic or not by going to lengths of burning it, cutting it, and so forth, then investigate my teachings thoroughly. Do not accept them just out of a sense of reverence or devotion or respect to me. Always check it thoroughly through your own reasoning and through the scrutiny of your own logic before accepting it as a teaching or as a practice for yourself. Yes.
아니 산지디 산지니 아니 샤이 쉬시글 최송요 말아 다디야 가시 이디 마선도 가래 산지 차원도 최송 거라야 요데 데 최디 거라게 자와 친부지 투지를 총여자 라 아니 자 카두들랑 세고 고야 깔레 카부도 손을 빼느라 늦었다고 주시 고니 술래된자 고야 머니베 넘바 나기 쓰기 네버 차선 데 손셔라 다디 제래 다 최송자들에 담보 아니 내 조와라나서 콩가 대상볼래 아니 대버시 주고라 아무들 콩가도 말면더니 코 주고대 담보니 봐 손발라는 뭐요 디 주고 나로 마티베 치 마무 손이서 삼더라 에 단나가서 양바친도 도저베 야닌제다 최 가사갈 때 있어래 근데 내들이 진짜 코란 상아지에서라니 나디소 나타서서라니 쉬고 말이 맞을라 말 남대셔 디마 땡셔바데 아니 자가케바데 베케바도 마티니 단단나가서 디피스탄도라 달린다 케바도 쓰신장
So then, even after gaining enlightenment, after 49 days of meditative equipoise, when he stood up from that meditative equipoise, he didn't immediately begin to give teachings. He was reticent about giving teachings because the truth that he had arrived at, he thought nobody would be able to understand it. He declared that I have found such a nectar-like truth, which I think people would not understand. So he was reticent about giving teachings about emptiness immediately, or the truth, the truth of suchness that he had arrived at. It was only after a while, at the insistence of many people, that he gave his first teaching, the Four Noble Truth. He didn't give a teaching on emptiness immediately. He taught us about the true nature, about the nature of suffering itself, by giving teachings on the Four Noble Truth to the first 5 disciples who were his companions before. So this is the manner in which an enlightened activity and its legacy and its effect survives to this day through that unbroken lineage of later Indian masters, scholars, commentators, and so forth. And to this day, we have the means to achieve liberation because of the enlightened activity of a historical Buddha.
디 단다이나 알아서 따야도. 단다이네 라마 데다 고로데부 데부 고로지 고지네 단도 추수 라 같이 페토마데 라발다 군두마이게 라마데 모불라 페 산도로 마찬다 다데 라마다 센슈나 같이 저거래요 말. 데네 고로데부 코라즈 미니스 간자 냠네치 다 단다 코라즈 셰브도 페 깔레 커보인 파 라바 생드 바테고에네 단동아절로 취했대 람데나 나워라 라 디즈마다 사코 사제레들레메 타바터여데 나자고 메데 간다 되게 냠네 시여 라 라니 이시네 시스노다 레슬란 디고 마라.
So then, not only that example now, in this day and age, we have many masters who even if they have reached, even in their old age, they continue to offer spiritual guidance, spiritual instructions. Many of them cannot walk properly and are like very old, but they still continue to offer guidance, give spiritual teachings. Now, this is not to say that these masters are realized and enlightened beings, but this is inspired by that same motivation to actively always work towards alleviating the suffering of others by showing them the path to overcome such sufferings.
야. 좋아요.
Is this altruistic motivation, bodhicitta, present in all Buddhist traditions? Like, is Theravada, for example, talked about bodhicitta and bodhisattva, or is it more Mahayana?
Mahayana. Teaching Tebo Chunganala in Yorwes, the Chanjusem Light the Yomara.
산축이 샘라야디 라지르체는 대바 첨부 지수처라. 대바 첨부 시여. 가서 지단기 고산도 단다 제체를 지르면서 대바 멤버라는 멤버다 마샤샤면 정말 겜 방리도 도다. 봐. 아주 대바 멤버라 두어지야다 대바 첨부를 쇼야지 되는 게만. 간데 가서 로이도 다지라. 아주 다부서는 제친지 다부 근데 나라즈랑 샤와이네. 다부 같이 보선다. 다 가장 지금 얘기 내 파마를 산다. 근데 말이면 이 수소도 당에 잠린 다운 솔라지 쳐나지라 배는 가서 보고 준주지는 담부 까까하자 야야야 도고라 라 남산디 까까 마싱가야 가지대니로 도마 되나시게 대바도 들어가서야 건조면 바래 지지 토를 인지다요 만다라 니 안도서 괜찮다고 쳐요 로그름 버려 좀 대바면 발라네 마죠 하셔야지다 대바야라도 쇼야도 저예요 뭐 간다 디가는 도고라 배는 가서 칸바지 자와야나 지금마다 대표 두자래 그 마시대 가고시 말라야 말 디가래 토불을 자와라 홀 마데 아버지 고다 세상 드즈양아도 연지 땅으로 버렸더라.
So when we're talking about the different Buddhist traditions, then when we say Theravada and then we say Mahayana, then we should not differentiate and discriminate between these lineages and traditions by saying that this particular tradition is much more effective and so forth. Because what do we mean by Theravada, Hinayana, and Mahayana? It's a gradual process of development of the mind. And for example, one cannot say that the foundation of a house is useless and immediately say that the roof looks very nice. One has to have a foundation first. So that is that is the difference in the vehicles. It's the difference in that kind of gradual development of the scope of the motivation. So in order, for example, even with ourselves, when we say that first we have selfish concerns only, then we begin to identify with our family, friends, and so forth. Then we extend it to our community, then to our race, country, and so forth. But first, it comes from that kind of willingness to open oneself to our family, friends, and so forth. So, in a similar manner, rather than talking about bodhicitta as a kind of a unique kind of feature of the Mahayana tradition, we need to first to understand the building blocks of how one can achieve and generate such a altruistic intention. One cannot do without the kind of practices that are both common to Mahayana as well as Theravada.
Moi nitsugi chenara, mazu tulo de kuzu techinre, techegi tulo khana de. O ti themegi tulo ge marira. Ngarazu nalo la tanda ngarazu nalo la teche theme khari ne yesi. Sanu tanda jechi jung de dara. Pena ngazu techin ilaga chene. So sanu tanda theme chale ko theme re de dara. Theme baji te ngazu theme la ya de yo de tulo khana cha a ko theme bari laga che orde. Kunzu sanu tanda de bi ya chep chemo. Tengo ne tenle de techin ba chare dara. tek pala de la yan zaegi kenza rodra ko ngazo mid che ka de hago mar ra pena ngazo kashi ngara chi bo sanda kashi chi bo jion sanda tene ja cher sanda do mara nalo la yer ra.
So then when we look at these different traditions, then immediately we kind of pick on the kind of different ways that these the adherents of these different traditions dress. But that's very superficial. We kind of pick on these kind of superficial differences. The real kind of mark of being a Theravada or being a Mahayana practitioner depends on the scope of the motivation of the person. It might be the case that a person who is wearing the garb of a Mahayana practitioner has very limited scope of motivation. And it might be the case that the person who identifies as a Theravada but has a very big scope of motivation. So who is the real Mahayana and who's the real Theravada in this case?
Thing ngara zagoda. Ngara zu samda na khali dura. Tagi ngazu glo ndo dajlera. Ngara chi pu sanata de inde pena rani thaba de tende jillo sam de ngazu teje teme chade ra. Ta nga dim de nga thabar chabla ne teba lim do. Tamara nga shanju seng lo ji gu de tende ge shanju seng ji rajile cheo ina teba chem. Ngara staire. Mi chora teche re teme re le zu tu tu emir.
So it doesn't matter the kind of outside and superficial differences in light of philosophy and assertions that we put upon ourselves. It matters how honest we are ourselves with our motivation. So as we mentioned in the spiritual path, we talk about a small scope being, a medium scope being, and a big scope being. And if your concerns are only about the pleasures, if your concern is only about being born as a human being in the next life, and then it is doubtful whether you can begin to call yourself a spiritual practitioner of any kind of tradition, because a spiritual person has to seek liberation, and then it depends on whether you seek liberation only for yourself or you seek liberation in order to alleviate the suffering of others. This is the kind of honesty we need with regards to our motivation, rather than saying, that is a Theravada, that is a Mahayana practice.
아니 수수 가을에도 선은 배신의 순주다 수수가 상관이 가을에도 돼 수수 따야 나 테메레도 테메레더라 신바지 실로는 주주도 에메.
So then these look at the way that the text instructs us in the scope of motivation, and study it, and then be honest with yourself. What is the scope of your motivation? That should be enough to answer your question.
배선로에서는 가요 다리 맞춰서 최시비 그 나팀에 차대야다. 현수 대신 차대야다. 아주 들러도 되는 넘버 다야마다. 산도 자체리라래.
So when we impart these spiritual instructions, then I do not do it with this kind of idea that you are beginners or Theravada or you are something and I am a Mahayana practitioner. We look at it as fellow human being studying the same thing.
是啊，真的是啦。
Okay, then we break for lunch.